Okay, get this. You come home after a long day, finally ready to relax, and you're greeted by, well, the mother of all messes.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about, like, a spilled glass of wine here.
Right.
We're diving into the world of, like, full-on sewage backups and sanitation
Oh,
emergencies.
yeah. Those are the worst.
Definitely. Especially, focusing on those issues that we see here in Southeast Queensland.
Yeah.
But, it's really wild. It's not even the visible mess that's the worst part.
Oh, tell me about it.
It's the stuff you can't even see.
Right, exactly. The invisible enemy, you could say.
Yeah, precisely. And that's where our deep dive for today comes in.
Yeah.
Looking at all the insights from Disaster Recovery Queensland.
They're the real pros when it comes to this kind of stuff, you know?
Absolutely. They really know their stuff.
Yeah. They actually stress that this isn't just a simple cleaning job. This is a full-blown biohazard situation.
Okay, invisible enemy and biohazard. But that sounds pretty serious.
Yeah.
So what are we actually talking about here?
Okay, so think like pathogens, bacteria, and viruses. All those tiny little nasties that just love hanging out in sewage.
Yeah.
Disaster Recovery Queensland actually puts it in a really vivid way. Like just one single drop of contaminated water
Wow.
can have millions of these pathogens in it.
Well, that's wild.
And they can actually stick around even after, you've cleaned up all the visible stuff.
So you're saying even if it looks clean, it could still be dangerous. That's a bit unsettling, to be honest.
Oh, absolutely. That's why Disaster Recovery Queensland's focus on biohazard services is just so important. They go way beyond just like surface cleaning.
Makes sense. They got to really get rid of all those hidden
Makes
threats.
sense.
So then what kind of health risks are we actually talking about here? What can these hidden threats actually do?
Well, Disaster Recovery Queensland has actually outlined a whole bunch of potential problems that could pop up.
Oh, great.
So, in the short term, like right away, you could be looking at things like breathing problems just from breathing in those contaminated particles in the air.
Oh, wow.
And then there's, the risk of spreading the contamination all over your home.
Right.
And even hidden mold growth, which can release even more nasty stuff into the air.
Wow. That sounds like a whole chain reaction of bad news.
Right.
And I'm guessing some people might not even realize how risky it is and just try to clean it up themselves, right?
Yeah, that's a pretty common mistake that people make.
Yeah.
And Disaster Recovery Queensland really wants people to understand just how dangerous DIY cleanup can be in these situations.
Makes sense.
Like the regular cleaning stuff you get at the store, the sprays and wipes and all that, they just won't cut it.
Yeah.
You really need specialized knowledge and all the right equipment and training to actually make the threat go away for good.
So let's actually get into the specifics here. What does a professional restoration process actually involve? What are the steps that experts, like the ones at Disaster Recovery Queensland, take to really make a space safe again?
Well, they have this super meticulous 4-stage process.
Okay.
They make sure every last trace of the biohazard is gone.
Thorough. I like it. Okay, walk us through it. What's the first thing they do? What's that first line of defense?
Okay, so it all starts with containment. It's kind of like setting up, a safe zone.
Right, I get it.
They basically isolate the whole area where the problem is so it can't spread any further.
Yeah.
And they use these special systems called negative air pressure systems.
Okay, negative air pressure. That sounds pretty intense. What's that all about?
Well, imagine a giant vacuum cleaner, right?
Oh, yeah.
Sucking all the bad air out of the area and making sure it doesn't get anywhere else.
Right.
That's basically what negative air pressure does.
Yep.
And of course, everybody who works on site has to wear, the full personal protective gear, the PPE stuff, so they don't get exposed to anything.
Wow, it's like a whole biohazard movie scene.
Yeah, kind of.
So after they contain the area, what's next? What happens then?
Okay, so then comes the extraction and removal phase. And this is way more than just mopping up some spilled stuff.
Okay.
They use these special pumps to get all the contaminated water and waste out of there. And they have to dispose of everything super carefully.
Right.
They might even need to take out like sections of the building itself, like drywall or flooring if it's been contaminated too.
Right.
And they're using those HEPA-filtered vacuum systems the whole time.
Yeah.
Which, sucks up even the tiniest little particles.
That's serious stuff.
It is.
It's a lot more involved than I ever thought it would be.
It is, yeah.
But then what about all those like microscopic threats we were talking about? How do they deal with those?
Well, that's where the really high-tech stuff comes in.
Oh, cool.
Stage 3 is all about advanced sanitization.
Okay.
Disaster Recovery Queensland uses all this cool technology. They've got hospital-grade disinfectants, of course,
Right.
and they use UVC light treatment, which is like a super-powered sunbeam that just zaps all those germs.
Okay.
And they also use ozone generation, which gets rid of any bad smells and any leftover contamination.
Okay.
And they even use something called thermal sanitation, which uses heat to kill any remaining threats.
Wow, that's amazing. So much science and technology involved.
Yeah.
But how do they know for sure that all of this is actually working?
Yeah.
How do they make sure that this space is really safe?
Well, they use something called ATP testing.
Okay.
It's this really cool scientific test that basically measures if there are any living cells left on the surfaces.
Oh, interesting.
You can think of it kind of like a microscopic detective,
Yeah.
sniffing out any lingering biological contamination.
I like that. So they contain the area, they get rid of all the visible stuff, and then they zap it with all this advanced technology.
Yeah. Right.
What's the last step? What happens after all that?
Okay, so the final stage is all about being responsible with the environment.
Okay.
Disaster Recovery Queensland really cares about disposing of all the contaminated waste properly.
Right.
They don't want to just, dump it anywhere and create more problems for public health and the environment.
Right.
They follow all the strict EPA-approved methods.
Okay.
And they try to use sustainable cleaning products whenever they can.
It's good to know that they're thinking about the bigger picture, not just cleaning up the immediate mess.
Yeah, for sure.
But all this sounds really impressive in theory,
Yeah.
Can you give us some real-world examples? Like,
Yeah.
how have Disaster Recovery Queensland's biohazard services actually made a difference in people's lives, especially here in Southeast Queensland?
Yeah, absolutely. So Disaster Recovery Queensland, they actually share some pretty heartwarming stories in their materials.
Oh, that's nice.
Like, they talk about helping this family in Southeast Queensland whose house was just, destroyed by a sewage backup.
Oh, yeah.
And the mom was, super worried about her kids,
Right, of course.
She was scared they'd get sick from all the contamination.
Totally understandable.
But after Disaster Recovery Queensland finished the whole restoration process, they actually showed her the ATP test results.
Oh, cool.
And it proved that the kids' playroom was completely safe again.
Oh, wow. That's great.
And you could just see the relief on her face, There was like a weight lifted off her shoulders.
I bet. I mean, I can only imagine how reassuring that must be for a parent,
Oh,
knowing their kids can play without any worries.
oh, totally.
It sounds like Disaster Recovery Queensland really goes the extra mile.
Yeah.
They don't just focus on the technical cleanup, they really care about the people too.
Oh, absolutely. They get that these situations can be really traumatic for families.
Yeah.
So they're all about providing, not just physical safety, but also that emotional peace of mind.
That's so important.
They talk about restoring homes to a safe haven,
Right.
which is more than just sanitized surfaces.
Right.
It's about rebuilding that sense of security and normalcy after such a disruptive event.
It's like they're not just cleaning up the mess, they're actually helping families heal and recover too.
Exactly.
And speaking of recovery, I know Disaster Recovery Queensland is also big on prevention.
Oh, yeah, big time.
So what are some things that, homeowners in Southeast Queensland can do to protect themselves against these kinds of disasters happening again in the future?
Well, there are a bunch of things they can do to minimize the risk, backflow preventers are a great way to stop sewage from backing up into your house in the first place.
Oh, right, yeah.
And sump pumps can help get rid of any excess water that might build up around your foundation.
Okay.
And even something as simple as making sure your gutters are clean and that your downspouts are directing water away from the house can make a huge difference.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's easy to forget about those basic maintenance things,
Yeah.
but they can really save you a lot of trouble down the line.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just about protecting your house,
Right.
It's about protecting your health and your peace of mind, too.
Right.
Knowing you've taken steps to prevent a future disaster can really help with the anxiety,
Yeah, totally. It's interesting how this all ties back to the idea of the invisible enemy, like we were talking about before.
Yeah.
We've been focusing on the invisible pathogens in sewage, but there's also this invisible layer of stress and worry that comes with these situations.
Oh, that's a really good point. And I think Disaster Recovery Queensland, they're actually tackling both of those invisible enemies,
Yeah.
They're using science and technology to get rid of the physical threats.
Right.
And they're also using, clear communication and being transparent to deal with the emotional stuff.
It's like a holistic approach, It's not
Hmm.
just about the physical environment. It's about taking care of people's well-being on multiple levels.
Exactly. And that's what makes their work so impactful. They're not just cleaning up messes, they're helping people rebuild their lives and feel safe and secure again.
This whole deep dive has really shown just how important it is to have, like, specialized experts handle these
Oh,
situations.
yeah, for sure.
It's not something you can just, fix with a bottle of bleach and a prayer.
No way.
Mhm.
These are serious biohazard situations that need special knowledge and equipment and training.
Exactly.
So if you ever find yourself dealing with this kind of disaster, the best thing you can do is, like, call the professionals,
Yeah.
especially here in Southeast Queensland, where Disaster Recovery Queensland has such a great track record.
Couldn't agree more. Now, before we move on to our final thoughts, was there anything else about Disaster Recovery Queensland's approach that really impressed you?
One thing that really stood out to me was their dedication to being environmentally responsible.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
It's obvious that they're not just focused on cleaning up the mess right away. They're
Yeah.
thinking about the long-term effects of their work and doing everything they can to, like, minimize their impact on the environment.
That's fantastic to hear. It really shows their professionalism and that they're committed
Yeah.
to doing things the right way. So we've talked a lot about the science, the technology, and the human impact of these situations.
Yeah.
But what would you say is the most important takeaway from all of this?
I think the biggest takeaway is that sewage and sanitation emergencies are about way more than just how things look.
Right.
It's not just about cleaning up what you can see. It's about understanding those invisible threats, taking them seriously, and knowing when to call in the experts.
Yeah.
And Disaster Recovery Queensland's approach is a perfect example of how to handle these situations, using science, technology, and a real understanding of how it affects people.
It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the things we can't see are the ones that matter the most.
Totally.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with one last thought-provoking question to think about.
All right, hit me with it.
Okay, so if we think of Disaster Recovery Queensland's work as like a model for dealing with invisible threats, what other areas of our lives could benefit from this kind of expertise and attention to detail?
That's a really great question. It makes you think about all the different ways we need to look beyond the surface and deal with those hidden challenges that can really affect our well-being.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that sometimes the most important things are the ones we can't see and taking steps to deal with those hidden dangers before they become a problem.
And it's also about knowing that there are experts out there, like the team at Disaster Recovery Queensland, who are dedicated to tackling these challenges and making the world a safer, healthier place.
This has been a really eye-opening deep dive into the world of sewage and sanitation emergencies, especially here in Southeast Queensland.
It has.
We've learned so much about the science, the technology, and the human side of these situations. And Disaster Recovery Queensland's approach has really given us a lot to think about.
It's been a fascinating exploration, and I think it's safe to say we all have a newfound appreciation for how important it is to take these invisible threats seriously.
Definitely. But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with one last thought. Remember, there's always more to learn, and staying informed is the best way to protect yourselves and the people you care about.
We encourage you to keep exploring these topics.
Okay.
Ask questions and never be afraid to seek out expert advice when you need it.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back soon with more explorations into fascinating and important topics.
When you asked that question about where else this expertise could be helpful, the first thing that popped into my head was indoor air quality.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. It's like, it's always there, this silent threat, but we never really think about it until something goes wrong.
Right, exactly. We don't see
Well,
the air we breathe, but it can be full of all kinds of nasty stuff,
totally.
like pollutants and allergens and even harmful little microbes that can make us sick.
Yeah, that's a good point. And just like those sewage backups, sometimes an air freshener isn't going to solve the problem.
Exactly. There are, like, special techniques to actually figure out how good your indoor air is and then make it better.
Okay.
Things like air purifiers or getting the right ventilation systems and even figuring out what's causing the pollution in the first place.
Right, right. So it's like taking that same approach that Disaster Recovery Queensland uses, all that attention to detail and that focus on safety, and applying it to the air we breathe.
Exactly. Understanding the science behind it, figuring out the risks, and then finding the right solutions to make our indoor spaces truly healthy.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's all about looking beyond what we can see and tackling those hidden threats, just like Disaster Recovery Queensland does with those biohazards.
And speaking of invisible threats, another area where this approach could be super useful is cybersecurity.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Data breaches and cyber attacks, they're all over the news these days. But it's hard to really grasp the danger because it's all happening in this digital world.
It's like another one of those invisible enemies, but with real-world consequences.
Exactly. And just like with those sewage situations, prevention is key.
Absolutely. Like using strong passwords and setting up multi-factor authentication, those are easy things that can make a big difference.
Right.
And being aware of those phishing scams, those tricky emails and messages that try to steal your information.
Yeah, those are sneaky. And just like Disaster Recovery Queensland says to call the professionals for sewage backups, it's super important to get expert help if you think you might have a cybersecurity problem.
Oh, for sure. Don't try to fix it yourself. There are like cybersecurity professionals who can assess your vulnerabilities and help you strengthen your defenses.
Okay.
And if something bad does happen, they can help you recover from an attack.
So it's about being proactive and realizing that sometimes the best way to stay safe is to be prepared.
And that brings us back to the main message of this whole deep dive, Whether we're talking about sewage backups, air quality, cybersecurity, or any other hidden threat, the key is to be informed, to be proactive, and to seek out the knowledge and expertise to protect ourselves and our communities.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's realizing that the things we can't see can still have a huge impact on our lives, and it's up to us to take them seriously.
And remembering that there are people out there, like the folks at Disaster Recovery Queensland, who are dedicated to tackling these challenges and making the world a safer and healthier place.
This has been a really eye-opening deep dive, hasn't it? It's amazing how, exploring one topic can lead to so many other insights.
It really does. It shows you that learning is a journey, a constant exploration, and there's always something new to discover.
So to our listeners out there, keep asking those questions, keep learning, and keep pushing those boundaries of understanding.
And remember, the world is full of wonders, both the things we can see and the things we can't. It's up to us to explore them all, with curiosity and a commitment to making the world a better place.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back soon with more explorations into the fascinating and ever-changing world around us.